Brooks London.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And thank you so much for having this debate tonight, because one thing that we have heard time and time again is that mental health is something that is affecting each and every Canadian, whether it is a family member, a coworker, a friend, a neighbor. These are things that we must recognize. Right now, I remain the chair of the Status of Women, where we are doing a very important study on the mental health of young women and girls. And from this study, I would like to look at some of the work that we're doing. But I also want to talk about some of the things that I'm finding with every single member that's sitting on that committee. There are 11 members. We have 1 male and 10 women. And I feel like I'm sitting amongst friends. I feel that I am sitting there talking about mental health as we are tonight, recognizing that there are many issues. And I don't know if I've said I'm going to be with Battle River Crowfoot splitting my time, but I will be this evening. But the one thing I'm really finding right now, it is a time of camaraderie. It's a time where I'm listening to people that in many times we are maybe opposing, but I'm finding that we're talking about all of these stories that we're sharing, and that is something that is so keen for me. I'm a mom, like so many other people here. I'm a parent. We have children. We have tried to get through COVID-19 as best as we can, but we know the impacts to our children. I look at myself and my 5 children, and I can tell you the last 2.5 years, well, if I could say it in this place, it was horrible. It starts with an H, but it was just not a good place to be. As members of Parliament, I'm not feeling sorry for any of us, but we know that we were there when people were going through crisis. We knew that we were there when, when businesses are saying we've got to lock our doors, when families were saying so-and-so's sick or we've lost a family member, when people were separated from their loved ones because of border challenges. I think about those things. And last week, we were in the Status of Women Committee where we had talked a lot about kids being out of school. And we talked about that children being out of school, for that was the worst thing that was possible. That the kids, when they needed to be together and all of that, we talked about dopamine today with Dr. Shank, but all of those things that kids need to grow were taken away from them for 2.5 years. And hopefully my son's not listening to my speech tonight, because I don't really like to talk about him personally, but I watched my son, a kid that played 4 sports, who played volleyball, basketball, soccer, badminton, whatever he could play, whether it was racket or ball, that's what he was doing. And he was told that they weren't playing sports anymore in his school. Not only was he not going to school, but they weren't playing sports. And then they were told that they couldn't go to the playground to run around and throw those hoops up. Well, my son was 17 at the time, and that kid needed to get out. Today we're talking about, in our Status of Women Committee, we're talking about the fact that, kids were turning to social media. Kids were turning to, playing video games. And all it was doing was hiding the pain, and it didn't fix anything at all. Because kids, when they needed it the most, were separated from people. And so we know that this is going to be a long journey back. I look at the fact that I also had gone through another crisis, and I'm proud of it. I'm proud and will never be ashamed of some of the things that have happened to me and my family in the last 2.5 years. And I can tell you from my own experience, while my family, I just turned my book because I thought it's time to just talk. When my family was going through crisis, I had 3 moms call me that week because they too were going in crisis, and they had no one to turn to. I was so fortunate because I have the most amazing family, an awesome husband, phenomenal children, and awesome friends and neighbors that were there surrounding me. And they were watching me as I was going through my own turmoil, but knowing that other parents needed us as well. And that is why I'm saying to every single person here, be there when somebody needs you. Be there when one of your colleagues is going through something, because you never know when your shoe's going to drop off. You never know. And so I think it's those relationships that in the first week of my little trauma that I really got to see that there were no services available when you really needed them. When I'm going through crisis, there was nothing to help me. And when these people were calling me, I was trying to provide them everything I could do as well. We need to do more. And I'm urging this government to get that $4.5 billion out of the coffers and start directing it to the organizations that need it. Start helping ramp up some of these services where our healthcare workers are exhausted, where they cannot be there any longer, and that they're burning out. We need to do it now because the crisis is right there at the edge, and it's only going to get worse. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Questions et commentaires. The honourable member for Nanaimo, Ladysmith.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the member for sharing with us today your personal experience, what you saw with your children, and the importance of having mental health supports in place. I'm also a parent, and I'm wondering, one thing that I've been noticing that's been impacting a lot of youth and children's mental health has been climate anxiety. Basically, the impacts of climate change and the anxieties that are increasing as a result. I'm wondering if the member could share if she's also seeing that, if she's hearing that from constituents, and how she feels we could best address the impacts of climate change and how it impacts our youth's mental health.
The honourable member for Elgin, Middlesex, London.
Thank you very much. And that's a really interesting question because we know that when children see hurricanes, when they see floods, that is very concerning. But I think right now there are multiple things that are concerning children. It's not just climate change, but it definitely is things like the economy. The mental health things that children are going through. I'm talking to kids that are working to put food on their table with their parents. I'm speaking to children who, I'm speaking to people that aren't getting their medications because, they haven't done their taxes and they don't have that health benefit card and they're just falling behind. I think there are so many things when it comes to this. Climate change is absolutely one up there, especially for our youth. And I think that we have to provide them hope in the future. And I think what we're right now, I'm not trying to say alarmist in a bad way, but I think what we have to do is work for healthy solutions that will help our children through this as well. Thank you very much.
Comments? L'honorable député de...
The honourable member.
And I want to thank the member opposite for sharing her story. And I know that as, I believe, chair of the Status of Women Committee, I'm sure she has some insight for us in terms of mental health and the impact on gender-based violence. And if she'd like to touch on, I know it's a huge subject, but if she'd like to share any thoughts on that. Thank you.
The honourable member for Elgin, Middlesex, London.
Thank you so much because I was going to come here and talk about gender-based violence as one of the biggest issues when it comes to mental health because that we know that over 60% of young women and girls are victims of sexual violence right now, of unwanted harassment, and we know that that has an impact on the mental health. You have taken something away from somebody. You have stripped their dignity in many cases. So 100%, we know that there's absolutely a strong correlation between mental health. I can think of, I'm going to actually, if you don't mind, read an excerpt that we got from Carol Todd because Amanda Todd's mother was at one of our meetings. And I'm sorry, but I look at Amanda Todd, I look at her mother, and it's right there. This is the type of work that we can do for families, and we need to do more. Thanks very much, Madam Speaker.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for Caribou, Prince George.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I want to thank my honourable colleague for not just her intervention today, but her passion that she has shown since we've been elected since 2015. Madam Speaker, through you, I want to ask, I know that she does a lot of outreach and work within her communities, and I know that there are some strong mental health organizations within her community that do incredible work on the ground. And I know she's a champion of them, so I want to, through you, Madam Speaker, give her an opportunity to talk about some of these incredible grassroots organizations that would benefit from the $4.5 billion that need to flow to the provinces.
For Elgin, Middlesex, London.
You've got me really excited because to the member, very excited because I think of an organization. I've got your 911, I've got your back. It's an organization that we have in St. Thomas. It is dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder for our frontline workers. And they are just an absolutely incredible organization, all doing fundraising within our communities. But that's the one thing, it's talking about those frontline workers needing those supports too. And so places like that are doing an excellent job. I also think of the great organizations like the London Abused Women's Centre and a variety of other organizations, whether it's the Rainbow Optimist Club of Southwestern Ontario. All of these different organizations have mandates. Some are helping youth in the LGBTQ community. Some are helping our professionals that are frontline workers. But all of us need to come together, and this is the great work that we can do. Thank you so much, Madam Speaker.
Resume